Rabbi Dr. Hugo Stransky was the rabbi at Beth Hillel from 1955 until retiring and making Aliyah in 1975. Born in the Czech capital of Prague in 1905, he was fond of religion from a young age and was sent for schooling to Köln, then Trnava, and finally to the Rabbiner's seminar in Berlin. In 1932, he married Hella Rachel Klein from Strasbourg, France, and they had 2 children. He led a congregation in Nachod and later in Zelina in Czechoslovakia. He was a military chaplain for the Czech army in World War II until he needed to flee to England in 1939 because of mounting anti-Semitism. His wife and their 2 children followed shortly after. He served in the administration of the Czech school in Wales and later as a rabbi in Oxford and London, as well as in Australia and New Zealand. In 1955, the Stranskys came to New York and he would become the rabbi of Beth Hillel. The rabbi worked to improve the Hebrew school and the classes offered at the shul, to bring in new members and donors, and even lead the shul to purchase land for a larger premises. It was never built, but the purchase proved profitable in the end. Later, he would take on responsibilities outside of the shul with the New York Board of Rabbis, the Jewish War Veterans Association, and the Society for the History of Czech Jews. He was also active in founding the local JCC and the International Synagogue at JFK Airport. Upon retirement, he was invited to a ceremony in Temple Israel of Staten Island, which welcomed a restored Torah scroll that had survived the war. Holding the scroll before the congregation, he studied it closely and recognized it. To his surprise, the scroll originated in his first pulpit in Nachod, close to a half-century earlier. Tears filled his eyes as he stroked the scroll and took pride in his career. Retiring shortly thereafter, he made Aliyah to Israel, settling in Kfar Saba, where he would pass away several years later. Shortly before his retirement, he recorded an interview with Jack Wertheimer for the Leo Baeck Institute's Oral History Project. The full interview and transcript are available on their website. A few minutes are included here.
It was called generally the Munich congregation. Why? On account of Dr. Berwald, who was principal rabbi in Munich and the most respected one in Bavaria. Yes, most of them came from Bavaria. So they called it the Munich congregation, and the bulk, the former founders were from Munich. Another group were the Nuremberg Jews, also from Bavaria. The Nuremberg group was actually before the Munich group was here, but then they merged. And they had even a rabbi from Nuremberg here, Dr. Heilbronn, Isaac Heilbronn. Now he died very early. He was only 2 years with the congregation, and unfortunately he died. He was also older than Dr. Berwald. And I am the successor to Dr. Berwald. It's now over 20 years that I'm with the congregation here. I came 1955.
Yeah. Now, this was the new. And
close
would you say the minhagim, the ritual, is primarily
the
Nuremberg,
Bavarian. Not Nuremberg and Munich. Rather, I would say, from the smaller communities in Bavaria, because tradition was maintained mainly in the small provincial Jewish communities. And the music, naturally, the liturgical great music, was maintained also then in the great liberal synagogues of Bavaria. Our congregation is the so-called Einheitsgemeinde, as they had it in Germany, not to make any distinction between someone who is strictly observant or less observant or even non-observant, but the conduct of the services and the trend was always traditional. I would characterize ourselves as a right-wing conservative in the American arrangements. But I would rather prefer the term which I always use, a traditional congregation. We are loyal to traditions, but we are not super loyal. Dr. Berwald himself was a man of the old guard of liberal Jews who still maintained traditional conduct in their synagogues as well as in their homes. And Dr. Berwald came actually from Orthodox seminary, one could call it also, from the Breslau seminary, which was more to the conservative side, the traditional side, not from the Hochschule für Jüdische Wissenschaft. And he had somehow to adjust himself to the demands of that group that came here or joined this congregation as traditional Jews from the smaller communities in Bavaria, where he was very well acquainted with, because he came around in Bavaria too, so he understood them. So it was self-evident that there was no organ. Now, we have not mixed views, because they were not used to it even in the liberal congregations. The women sat on the gallery, So Rabbi Berwald, as such, laid the ground for the conduct of the services, and the board of management or the trustees were composed of all facets, those who are strictly observant, those who were very religious and not so observant, and those who were liberal, or even reform in their concept. But that was all only in the European style, which was not extreme as we have it in America. I didn't change very much, except, if I may say so, since my attitude was more towards the inside of Judaism, having been always a Zionist, that the spirit and the mentality changed in many ways, and various things we introduced that were not here.
Could you give me a few examples?
For instance, the firstborn who have to fast on Erev Pesach and can be absolved of it if they learn a certain tractate and conclude it on Erev Pesach, that we can make a seal. So I introduced that from Chanukah every Shabbos after Musaf. I took a short Masechta and we learned. And the interesting thing is that the women also came. And sometimes I had at the course more women than men, because we have always more women than men at the service. Now, naturally, the main change which I brought about was in the Hebrew school. We increase also, that all you will read in the fast, we increase the number we doubled it in 2 years. Through that we got new members, because it's parents came along, I intensified the study. They had everything in the initial stages, but it was not developed. It was so thwarted, sufficient.
But not...
Because it was not going into the depths. It was going to keep the people together through their services as they were used to it in Germany, the synagogue, and that was all. Now, another matter which was not here, but what I was surprised, although I am a traditional Jew and Rabbi Beth was a liberal Jew, he never had it in his synagogue. They had there the so-called confirmation, confirmation, which consisted of some ethical principles to teach the girls and make on Shavuos a great function in the synagogue. And I understand they didn't have it even in Munich. I introduced a so-called course for Jewish home and household duties, liturgy, topography of the prayer book, a whole course the girls had to take for a whole year, a severe course, and tests. Then in the school we arranged graduation services, great services. The youth started to conduct some of the services, and so on and so on. But I did not try in a systematic way to make the people more traditional than they are. I was really of the opinion, this is an Einheitsgemeinde, I will not exercise any force in any way, but I will give myself as I am. And wherever someone picks up from me and increases by it his inner Judaism, or his greater interest in Zionism, or in greater interest in Jüdische Wissenschaft, I am satisfied.
Would you say, now that you look back on 20 years of your rabbinate here, that you've been successful in this goal?
I will tell you. In a way, if I would have started this congregation, right from the inception would have been the same. I think it would have been much different. Would have had, first of all, a much greater Jewish content than I found among them when I came. And it would have been more Americanized in the method and style, how to conduct the affairs even of a congregation. Because you cannot live isolated as a German group, and there is something about which I will write in this Minhag Ashkenaz. Minhag Ashkenaz is good. The content should be Minhag Ashkenaz, but the code must be according to the ways of the country.
So, one of your major goals then was to Americanize the congregation.
Already the way how invitations are being sent out, how matters are being followed up, to learn from them. They didn't want to learn from us. They want to be themselves. They considered this as their Heimat. No, I didn't want Heimat here. Inwardly. On the other hand, as a pastor, I had to let them have their Heimat, in order that through the Heimat they are attached to my religious concept, or to religion at all, and to Judaism. Chanoch lanar al pi darko, says King Solomon, teach the child according to his ways. What does it mean? You have to go through his way as he can, what he likes and loves, to bring him to your way.